to Sheeran Guitar Tutorials. My name's David, and today I'll be giving an updated lesson on how Ed Sheeran plays Eyes Closed live. With the Sheeran loopers that just came out recently, I thought it was a good time to update the original video I had released. This will be a looping tutorial, however, if you do not want to play with a loop pedal, I'll highlight the portions of this tutorial you'll want to learn down in the description below. So you can play it without a loop pedal. I will show you how. So that being said, you want your guitar in standard tuning and a capo on the 2nd fret. However, he does sometimes play the song kind of a live acoustic version with capo on the 3rd fret, so if you would prefer that, you can do that. But I will be doing it on capo on the 2nd fret, so let's jump on in. Alright, so I'll just give you a close-up on the chords you'll need to know for this song. There's only 4 of them, so it's not so bad. Disclaimer at the beginning though, if you're playing this song with the capo on the 3rd fret, everything I show you in terms of chord placement relative to the capo is just slid up 1 fret there, so just so you know. So you start with a B5 power chord, which looks and sounds like this. And you're just using your index finger to basically mute the 1st, 2nd, and 6th strings so they don't ring out. Your 2nd chord is a B5 over B flat, which sounds like this. Which again, you're muting that 1st, 2nd, and 6th string. Your 3rd chord is kind of a A flat minor-ish sort of chord, so you're using your middle finger now to fret the 6th string there, but still using your index to mute the 5th, the 1st, and the 2nd now. Sort of an A flat minor. And then you come to an E sus2, which could be played technically in 2 different ways. You'll have the open 6th, and then fretting the 4th fret of the 3rd and 4th strings. And then you can mute the 1st, 2nd, and 5th string, and just kind of play it like this. Or what you can actually do is you can fret the 2nd fret of the 5th string there with your index finger and still mute the 1st and 2nd string, and it'll sound like this. It doesn't actually matter whether you mute or play the 5th string because it's still the same chord. Just because the note there on the 5th string is already in the chord. So up to you. I like playing the 5th string. I think it sounds more full. So just some strumming patterns that you'll need now to play during different parts of the song. The main one is shown up on the screen, and it sounds like this. You could actually leave out that 3rd down strum if you wanted to too, and just make it your choice, but that's the main one that you'll typically play during the post-choruses. During the final post-chorus, there's these other 2 strumming patterns, which again, you can play if you want to. I've seen Ed Sheeran do that live, but again, you don't have to. The 2nd alternate one sounds like this. And the last alternate one is this. Alright, so now I'll break down each loop that makes up the song of Eyes Closed. So the 1st loop is shown on the screen right now, which is typically played using a synth by Ed, but if you don't have one of those, there's still a way around that. So use a synth if you have it, but if you don't, you can get the same effect on your guitar by using a pick and doing some palm muting, which is just kind of laying the fleshy part of your strumming hand near the bridge of the guitar. Kind of makes it sound like that. So you can get the same kind of effect here. And basically this whole 1st loop is just plucking the bass note of whatever chord you're playing and then plucking the G string of the chord. So I will just play it right now for you for the 1st layer. And so what I'll say about that 1st layer is if you didn't want to do any looping, you could just play the whole song by doing that plucking pattern right there, and it would sound great. So if you'd rather do that, you could do that. Okay, so just to give you an idea on how you would add that 1st layer to whatever loop pedal you're using, I'll just show you here. I'm using a Sheeran Looper X. The same principles apply to whatever kind of looper you're using. And basically the trick is that when you go to start, you want to hit your record button at the exact moment you pluck your 1st note. So for instance, you hit record right when you go to pluck the bass note of that B5 chord, and then you would hit that same button or pedal again when you're about to pluck the B5 your second time through. So you hit record right when you start, and then you get to the end of your chord progression, and right as you're about to start the chord progression a second time, that's when you would hit the button again to finish the loop. So for an example, it would look something like this. So you can see the second time I went to hit this record button was right when I was about to play the B5 again. So you hit it at the very beginning, and then you play your progression, and then right when you're about to hit B5 again, you would press it. So moving on to loop number 2 now. It's just a muted strum on all the strings. So you use your fretting hand to just kind of lay lightly over all the strings, and then you just strum all the strings. And that strum comes whenever you are plucking the G string during loop number 1. So to kind of show you what that would look and sound like to add that second loop to the first one that we made, I can play that first loop that we did, and then I will add the strumming. Just let it play through one time so we can add that layer. Here we go. Now we have our our synth line and our snare. All right, so then that brings us to loop number 3, which I think is the hardest part of the whole song. This is the percussion, the banging on the guitar part. So this one loop has 3 different layers to it, and if you really wanted to, you could break layer 1 into 4 different parts. So we'll go through it. I'll play layer 1 in its entirety because I think it's easier, honestly, to just sort of feel the rhythm rather than trying to go sub-piece by sub-piece of layer 1. So this is the entirety of layer 1 of loop number 3. So I know layer 1 there is a bit tricky, it's a lot all at once, but listen to the song, feel out the rhythm, play it over and over again, and you will get it down. And each subcomponent of layer 1 is there on the screen, so you do have that. So moving on to layer 2, it's similar with some slapping and some strumming, and then some muting strumming there. So layer 2 in its entirety is just this. That muted strumming is just down up, 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 with a little extra emphasis on the first down strum of that whole kind of portion there, and that kind of muted strumming there is repeated, I believe, 7 times. So again, layer 2 just sounds like this. And that strumming just goes to the end of the sort of loop length that you've already established with all the way back on loop number 1. All right, so then that brings us to layer 3 of our third loop here. So this is, again, typically done using a synth by Ed Sheeran, but if you do not have one of those, you can still get away with it by doing the same kind of thing, but just banging near the bridge of your guitar. And it's basically just more banging near the bridge, basically. So you're going to do that on the 1 beat, the and beat after the 3, and the 4 beat. So if you think back to the first loop that we did that had the plucking of basically you're going to hit the bridge of your guitar when you go to play the first note of each chord and then the last 2 notes of each chord. So it's repeated 4 times here, but just to give you a sense, it's you hit the bridge when you do that first note, and then you do it for the last 2 notes. So it basically just sounds like this. And the very last portion of that, so you do it 4 times in total. Sometimes Ed will not play that very last time. He'll only do it 3 times to get ready for the to the final loop layer. So up to you if you want to do that 4 or 3 times. It doesn't make as much of a difference. Alright, so to put all that together for loop number 3, I will add it to the first 2 loops that we've created so far. So let me get the first 2 going. Now I have my loop ready to overdub on track number 3 here, and it would sound like this. That's your first 3 loops. Alright, so then that finally brings us to our 4th and final loop here. Again, it's shown up on the screen, and it is more plucking, and this is probably the kind of rhythm or the tune to the song that you'll remember the most. So similar to the first plucking pattern, if you just want to pluck this the whole time and don't want to do looping, this is a completely valid way to play the entire song. But I will just play you the 4th loop now. So to show you how to add that 4th and final layer to the loop we've been creating, I'll show you how to do that now. So first let me get the previous 3 going. And then I'll put my 4th track in overdub. And here we go. All 4 layers. Alright, so now just to give you a little overview on what loops to play at which part of the song, just kind of wanted to give you that. So, you start, you're adding your loops, you're letting them all go, you get to the point where you got them all playing. Typically, Ed will let them kind of all play through once he has them all going there, and then he'll go into the verse, and the verse typically will play the 1st and the 4th loops through twice, and that's kind of what makes up your verses there. And a side note on that, if you only have a 2-track looper, what you could do is you can combine loops 1 and 4 to the same track, and you can still play the song that way pretty well. You'd be putting your snare and your bass and your beating on the guitar on your track number 2, and that can still get you by. If you only have a 1-track looper, that's just kind of what you got. So verses are 2 times through on loops 1 and 4. So then you would get to your pre-chorus, which is kind of when the snare would come in, and you would let that play through 1 time in its entirety. And then as it's getting to the final quarter of the 2nd time through, that's typically when all the music stops, and so you would stop that if you're able to do that on your looper. And that would be your pre-chorus. Should also note that during the verse and the pre-chorus, you're typically not actually playing anything on the guitar. You could be playing something on the guitar if you want, but typically Ed does not. So that's your pre-choruses. And then you're getting into your chorus, which is when you're adding the loop 3 here. And this is when you can start doing the plucking pattern that we actually do in loop 4. You can start to play along with what you've put into your looper here. So you get into your chorus, and you're doing your plucking pattern. And you let that go through twice. And then you get to your kind of post-chorus, and you're letting this still play through twice. But now you're doing those strumming patterns that we kind of went over. So either one of those will work, but kind of as he's doing that, I's part, you're sort of strumming along to the song. But again, you could pluck if you want. You could do whatever you want really. But that's Ed will start to strum at that point. From there it kind of rinses and repeats, right? Verse 2 is the same as verse 1. Pre-chorus 2 is the same as pre-chorus 1. Chorus 2 is the same as chorus 1 as well. I've seen him For the second post-chorus, I have seen him pluck instead of strum, but if you want to strum again, that's also fine. And then that brings you to the bridge, which is typically just played similar to how the verses are, with just loops 1 and 4. And that will go. And that's kind of paused near the end as well. And that's just kind of gone through one time there, before finally going back to the final chorus, which is where you kind of bring everything back, right? You bring back loops 2 and loops 3, and you bring them all back for your final chorus, which again you're kind of doing your plucking during for 2 go-arounds. And then you kind of get to the second half of the last chorus, or the post-chorus there, last post-chorus, whatever you want to call it, and you add in the strumming. Either of those strumming patterns. This is where those slightly different ones come from that I've seen him play. You just want to keep the normal one. That's just fine too. So kind of up to you there. All right, so now I'll be doing a full playthrough of the song. So feel free to watch this back as many times as you need to practice, or just simply enjoy. Alright, so that's a looping tutorial for Eyesclosed. So if you made it this far, thank you. Appreciate it. Feel free to subscribe and turn on the notifications, like the video, comment on it, tell your friends, everything. So yeah, thank you, and until next time.